for parliament.
Okay.
Because every Ugandan should be free to run wherever they are. But this thing of saying that Balaalo, a certain tribe, must be evicted, who have bought land legally and legitimately, have negotiated and fulfilled all the obligations, this is a travesty.
Of every single thing Museveni fought for in this country. I'm really, really, really disappointed. Mr. Museveni, you know today, if you did the right thing, I'll defend you with my life.
On this one, you are so wrong.
100 Mwenda, in a moment of what many perceived as profound arrogance and a troubling embrace of tribalism, once called for Baganda to expel other tribes in calling the Acholi people on a national TV from Baganda land. His justification, ironically, stemmed from an accusation of tribalism against the Acholi regarding the Balaalo. This story that I'm about to say then is offered to him and to anyone open to diplomacy and understanding as a mirror reflecting the complex, often painful realities of land custom and identity in Uganda. The sun beat down relentlessly on the red hearth of Acholi land, baking the cracks deeper into the soil, much like the anxieties etched onto the faces of its people. For generations, the Acholi had lived by a profound truth. The land belonged to the community. It was not a commodity to be bought and sold, but a sacred inheritance held in trust for ancestors and descendants alike. Clan elders, their faces lined with wisdom and worry, would gather under the sprawling acacia trees, mediating disputes, allocating plots for cultivation, ensuring that everyone had a place to plant their simsim and millet, a place to bury their dead ones. This was not merely a legal system, it was the very fabric of their existence, woven with threads of kinship, shared responsibility, and a deep reverence for the earth. Then came the Balaalo. Not all at once, but a steady, inexorably flow. They arrived with their vast herds of longhorned cattle, their eyes set on the fertile grazing lands. The Acholi, these newcomers, represented an alien concept of land ownership. The Balaalo saw land as a resource to be required, fenced and exploited for commercial gain. They purchased vast tracts, often from individuals who, in desperate bid for cash or through a misunderstanding of customary tenure or through a family conflict, had no right to sell communal land. Fences sprang up sudden and welcome scars on the landscape, dissecting ancient pathways, cutting off access to water sources, and enclosing ancestral burial grounds. The conflict was immediate and visceral. Acholi farmers, whose crops were trampled by errant cattle, found their pleas met with indifference or worse, with threats. Women who walked for miles to fetch water found their routes blocked. The very rhythm of Acholi life, intricately tried to be communal nature of the land, was disrupted. The Balaalo, for their part, often viewed the Acholi as backward and resistant to progress, yet they carry guns. They saw their acquisition as a legitimate business transaction, failing to grasp the profound spiritual and cultural significance of land to the indigenous communities. This clash was not just about land. It was a collision of worldviews, of economic models, and of deeply ingrained identities. The accusations of tribalism leveled at the Acholi by some, including Mr. Mwenda, felt like a cruel irony, a deflection from the fundamental injustice of their communal heritage being dismantled piece by piece. Now, let us turn to Baganda, a kingdom with its own complex history of land tenure. While Buganda's land laws have evolved significantly, partially with the Malo land system introduced during the colonial era, there are aspects that surprisingly resonate with the Acholi customary land system, albeit through a different lens. The Malo land system in Buganda, with its freehold characteristics, might seem diametrically opposed to Acholi commercial ownership. However, before the full imposition of Malo, Buganda also had a nuanced system where access to land was often tied to chieftaincy and clan. While not strictly communal in the Acholi sense, there was a strong emphasis on the rights of Bibanja holders, that is the tenants, who occupied land and had unsuffragable rights, even if the ownership rested with the Malo holders. These Bibanja holders often for generations cultivated their plots, built their homes, and saw the land as theirs by virtue of their long occupation and use. Eviction was historically difficult and often required significant compensation, recognizing the deep connection of the occupant to the land. It is this concept of unsuffragatory rights and the sanctity of occupancy, even if not outright ownership in the Western sense, that resonated deeply with Acholi customary law. In both systems, a person's livelihood and identity were inextricably linked to their ability to access and utilize land for their sustenance and well-being. Both systems in the passions for short to ensure that people had a place to belong, a place to cultivate, and a place to live. The historical protection of the Bibanja holders in Buganda, which often put their rights above the desires of the titled Malo owner for immediate commercial exploitation, echoes the Acholi elders' commitment to ensuring every member of the clan had access to land. Therefore, when Mwenda speaks of the Acholi being tribalistic against the Balaalo, and then simultaneously suggests expelling the Acholi from Buganda by the Baganda, not the Balaalo, he inadvertently highlights a deep hypocrisy. If the Acholi are to be chastised for defending their communal land against what they perceive as an invasion, then by what logic can Buganda claim a right to its own land and potentially expel others? The struggle of the Acholi against the commercialization and disproportion of their communal land is not tribalism. It should also wake up the Baganda. It is the desperate struggle of the people of Uganda and the Acholi to preserve their heritage, their identity, and their very way of life. It is a struggle for the sanctity of customary rights against the relentless march of commercial interest. Perhaps if Mr. Mwenda, and indeed all of us, can look beyond the simplistic narratives of tribalism and instead delve into the historical and cultural significance of land to different communities, we might find common ground. The plight of the Acholi in defending their communal land and the historical protection of Bibanja holders in Buganda both speak to fundamental human need for secure access to the earth, a need that transcends narrow tribal lines. And Dodoth recently said that after 49 years in Buganda, your land returns to Kabaka for some parts of the land. Diplomacy, understanding, and willingness to acknowledge the legitimate claims of all peoples to their heritage, these are the true paths forward, not the divisive rhetoric of expulsion and accusation by Mwenda. Like in Uganda, some of the land you only lease all system. Udonga gave an example that after 49 years, some of the land returns to Kabaka, including the properties built on it. Not all lands in Acholi are customary land, that's the truth. But most of the lands in the village are either customary or communally owned, meaning it is owned by an entire clan, of which Kekar Acholi should have been the first protector and the guardian angel of this. Unfortunately, things are not happening the way that Acholi people expect. So, this pushing Buganda into what is not right brings also a question to who are the people who had invisible hand in historically dividing the Acholi people with the Buganda, in historically dividing the Buganda people with the Acholi. It's also a wake-up call to the Buganda and Acholi to seek a path to progressive reunion. Thank you.